So I am really excited to talk with you today about this message. Surviving to thriving. You know, whenever I come to think about what we're going to talk about, I really spend time just kind of reflecting in my own life. Because I've said it many times, my messages aren't just for you, they're for me too. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes I need that reminder. And I think when it comes to survival mode, I think all of us can say we've been there, we've lived in survival mode. But I really tried to reflect on my life, and I feel like until the last 6 years, I spent all of my life in a very much survival mode. And so I thought I'd kind of share a little bit about that and then kind of show you the transition and how I shifted my perspective. So as I mentioned before, I was born with a cleft lip and palate, and when you're born with that, you start having surgery right away. So like my first surgery was 2 months old. Obviously I don't remember it, you know. But I had two parents who were very young. Mom was 20, Dad was 22. And in the 70s, they didn't do ultrasounds. They had no idea what was coming. And so I was a big surprise. And I got taken away right away when I was born. And, you know, my mom tells the stories of how scared she was. And my mom has extreme anxiety. And back then, they didn't know about that either. And so, as you can imagine, I was very sheltered and very doted after because of the fear of things. You know, a lot of surgeries, a lot of doctor's appointments. When I got old enough to even understand what was going on, I was, of course, immediately in survival mode because I had all these things I had to take care of and be careful, and you know, and my mom's anxiety was put on me at a very young age. So that anxiety grew in me at a very young age, and I was scared of everything. And again, very protected and sheltered and not allowed to do a lot of things. And in my family, we had a very large family, and no one else in my family had any kind of birth defect or any kind of issue like I had. So then that made everybody in my family kind of be overly protective of me. And so I was always feeling like I had to be scared of everything. So I had a lot of fear as a child, you know, and like I said, my parents had it too, so it was really prevalent in my home. You know, my parents turned to religion, and they were very, very, you know, by the book religion. And so my dad used that to show us his ways to survive. You know, we prayed to God to help. My dad was a musician, so he would play music a lot to try and calm us and make us feel better. But other than that, I wasn't really taught a whole lot about survival skills. It was just like, I didn't even understand what survival mode was. And then fast forward, I get into my late teens, I meet my future husband. He comes from a very abusive home, a lot of drug abuse, a lot of physical abuse, and I kind of took him in under my wing like I was going to save him and protect him. And he was very much in a survivor mode all the time, you know. And I mean, he was getting kicked out of his house all the time and living at friends' houses, and so he was always in that survival mode. He also grew up very poor. I dealt with that as well. My father was in the Air Force, was a welder, came out of the Air Force and worked for welding companies, and he got laid off all the time. And Mom couldn't work because she had to take care of me. So we were very poor for many parts of my childhood. You know, we had to stand in line for the government cheese. I remember it very well. It's my favorite cheese as a kid. I love those grilled cheese sandwiches, you know. And so there was also that survival mode of knowing that we didn't have a whole lot. We had a lot of generous people through our church who would donate things to our household and help us out with things. But I remember that survival mode kicking in of, you know, do we have enough for food? Do we have enough to pay the rent and pay our bills? And so I remember at a young age hearing my parents talk about that. And then fast forward, when I got with my husband at a very young age as well, we kind of were in the same boat. He got into painting and construction, and he'd get laid off all the time. And so then we wouldn't have a lot of money to pay bills. And so I found myself constantly struggling to survive and keep the bills paid. Do we have enough to, you know, and we had our children young. So then it was, okay, now we got to keep them alive. And so there was just like this constant pattern of Do we have enough to survive? Am I going to be okay? And that mindset was so normal to me, I didn't think that there was any other way to be. Nobody was really teaching me anything different. And that's how I continued my life. So a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of unsure of how to deal with any of this stuff. And fast forward, you know, my kids have grown, my daughter developed anxiety, and so I had to kind of recognize that in her and realize, okay, what can I do to help soothe her anxiety? And it kind of started getting me thinking differently, because I think when you shift into mom mode, now you're not thinking about yourself, so you're trying to keep your kids happy and trying to figure out how to help them calm that feeling. And so, you know, I see myself going through this whole thing of just trying to make sure everybody's okay. Everybody's surviving, including myself. We're all making it. But there was no thought process of thriving. It was like, I just hope we're going to make it to the next day. And that was so normal to me. I didn't think it was unusual. And I knew so many people that were feeling the same way. Then we reached right before COVID, before the pandemic, is when I lost my husband in 2019. I kind of lost him before that, which I mentioned before with you guys, to his drug addiction. And so, but when he passed away, it really put me in a dark place. And, you know, I believe that we go through really, really traumatic things to come out and find our inner self sometimes. It like kind of shakes you and jolts you and gets you to wake up and go, wait a minute, what's going on here, you know? And so I was in this dark place. I was feeling hopeless and unsure who I was or what my purpose was. And I started reading some books and started talking to some people, and slowly I started kind of focusing on metaphysics. The idea of somebody, you know, after life, trying to find that connection to, I guess, the fact of my husband being gone. I was like, I know there's something after life, but I wasn't completely sold on the whole religion thing, you know? And so I started really getting into the metaphysics, and I found Abraham Hicks, and I started learning about inner being, and that really sparked something in me. The idea of, you know, this human experience is just one part of what I am, and I've been living it so well. I've been really doing the human thing, like hardcore, right? Like, you know. So then I was like, wait a minute, what about this other part of me, this inner being part of me? So as I started to study more about metaphysics and really started to do a lot more internal work on myself, I really started understanding that, okay, this survival mode thing, this is my human side. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I mean, it's our instinct, right, for us to survive. It's what kept us here and kept us, you know, continually to grow as far as there's how many of us now on the planet? So we've done the survival mode so well that we've, you know, have an abundance of us. Maybe, you know, I think too many of us, I don't know. But, so we got that part down, but the thriving part, that was something that had never really even crossed my mind. So I would like to think over the last 6 years, I have shifted my perspective into what thriving is. So it's like, okay, how are you shifting it? Well, I started learning how to listen to my inner voice more, which took me learning the practice of meditation, learning that meditation comes in many different forms. It's not just, you know, sitting quietly in my room. I can do meditation when I'm cooking, when I'm doing art, when I'm listening to music. And so I started finding ways of meditating in other ways and having these internal conversations with myself. And that was a great place to start. But I think the biggest thing that really shifted my perspective was changing my environment. I stopped participating in the fear narrative. COVID, the pandemic, I, like most of us, got sucked into all of it. And I was a nervous wreck, watching every piece of news there was, reading every article that came out, just soaking in all the fear that came with the pandemic. And it just was almost crippling at some point. And I know some of you experienced that as well. Once we got kind of transitioning out of the pandemic, 21, 22, when I found you guys, I started changing my environment. Coming here was part of that change in the environment because I didn't have a place to go where I could get inspired and have this new thought process. So that was part of changing my environment. But I also turned off the TV. I stopped reading the news. Now mind you, I know it's a thing that we get kind of embedded in us that we're supposed to be these responsible adults. And we're supposed to, you know, I mean, I grew up watching my grandparents read the paper every day, and we're supposed to know every little thing that's going on, because if you're not paying attention, you're not, you know, going to be able to make those big changes. You're not going to be able to be part of the solution. You're part of the problem because you're not paying attention. That's another narrative we're just being told. We do not have to participate in this. And let me tell you, the best thing you can do for yourself is not participate. Because that fear narrative is not going to go away. Unfortunately, we live in a very large society with a lot of thought processes all coming at us. And everybody's got an opinion and an idea of how things should be. And it's easy for people to latch onto that, and it becomes this thing that grows and grows and grows. We have to be different. We have to stand out. And I know I've talked about this before. We are an example. There are so many people that can feed into that fear narrative, and it becomes part of their life, and it consumes you, and it's all you think about, and you can't function and grow and really move forward in your life if you're sucked into that fear narrative. So we have to figure out how to separate ourselves from it, and it takes practice, and it takes time. You know, I didn't like right away just stop looking at all this stuff. I had to do it a little bit at a time. I had to slowly pull myself away. And the more I pulled myself away from things that gave me those negative fear feelings, the more I was starting to feel a little bit better. So, you know, I do more and more. I change the music I listen to. I'm kind of like Polly. I listen to a lot of heavy metal. I was a rocker, you know, and I love that stuff. There's a lot of passion in heavy metal. There's a lot of raw emotion and feeling, but there's also a lot of anger, and you're mad, and you just want to like lash out at the world, which sometimes that feels good. My favorite time to listen to heavy metal is when I'm in traffic, because I just need to be like, you know, while I'm driving. But then I also realized that there were times when I was listening to this music that I always listened to that really like served its purpose at its time, that no longer was giving me that feeling anymore. I was starting to feel the negativeness to it, and I thought, well, I don't want to feel angry. I don't want to be like mad at everybody and telling them off, because that's not really helping me, you know? So I started finding inspirational music. I started seeking out music that, not necessarily that was Christian music, which I was raised on a lot, nothing wrong with it, but I was just looking to something that was going to speak to me and to my soul. So thank God for YouTube. We are so blessed, the ability we have to find music at this point in our lives. What a blessing. So, you know, I'm just going on YouTube, and you put in something and it will find something like it, right? So I talk about changing your algorithm. You know, algorithm is what tells the computer and the AI tells them what you want to hear more of, right? So the more you're liking things that are positive, the more you're listening to things that are feeding your soul, the more it's going to give you that. So you really got to kind of outsmart your algorithm, you know. So anytime, for example, on Facebook, I see a post of something I don't like, I will X that post, and it'll say, why don't you like this? And one of the options is, it's not something I'm into, or it's not my topic or something, I don't like this topic. So I hit that. And I will do that on everything that pops up in my feed that I don't want to see or read. Because I don't need to feed myself more fear. I don't need to feed myself more negativity. This is just keeping me in survivor mode the more I'm seeing that stuff. And it's not helping me. Yeah, so you're staying informed, but how informed are you really? You're staying informed of what's going on out here, but how informed are you on what's going on in here? Because this is what matters. What's going on in here, not what's going on out here. We are supposed to connect to others, yes, but we need to give our attention to here. So if we're listening to all this fear-based stuff, we're letting this stuff be in our algorithm, we're listening to music that's, saying negative things. I mean, a perfect example, I'm in actually a very healthy, loving relationship right now, and I couldn't be happier. So every time I hear a song about she cheated on him or he broke my heart, and it's all this, trash talking love and relationships, I'm like, I don't want to listen to that because I'm in a happy relationship, so I don't want to listen to she cheated on him, he cheated on her. Like, that's not going to help my relationship. That's not going to help me feel good about myself or my relationship. So I start looking up all my favorite love songs. I got all these 60s and 70s and 80s love songs on my playlist. I listen to all the time, because that's where I'm at. That's where I want to stay. I don't want to be in that other mindset. I want to be in this mindset. So I'm feeding myself those things, and I'm recognizing when I hear a song that's not in that wavelength, then I don't want to listen to that song. Sure, it was a cool song back when I was going through those things, but that's not helping my situation now. So changing your environment, changing what you're seeing, what you're hearing, but then you also got to change how you're talking to yourself, how you're talking to others. That's the hard one. It's easy to turn off things and change your algorithm. It really is, once you get the hang of it. But changing your conversation with yourself, that's where your real challenge lies. But if we want to get to a thriving state of mind, that conversation's got to change. We got to stop being the one that's beating ourselves up, as she talked about, and we got to start being the ones that's lifting ourselves up, that's loving ourselves, giving that same grace and love and patience we give to everyone else, at least most of the time, maybe not everybody, but and start giving it to ourselves. We have to think about our words and what we're saying. Our words are so powerful. One of the best things I learned when I came here, I will never forget how Kay did. Like the first time I met Kay and we talked about something, I made a comment about how I was financially struggling. And she said, no, you're financially growing. And I was like, mind blown from that simple shift of words. So, that made me realize that the words and what we say are so important. And what we're saying to others and how we're describing our situation to others. We need to really think about how we're saying that to them, because we're hearing that. Our brain and our body is hearing everything we're saying. So if we're telling someone else, I'm really going through a hard time right now. Like, look, I think it's great to share with each other about what we're going through. But how we phrase it, how we frame it, how we describe it is very important, because we're listening too. They're not the only ones listening. So I think the other one that's really huge, and we talk about this a lot, is letting go of things that are out of our control. I mean, that's a hard one, right? There are so many, because we do feel like we can change, we can do this, we can do that, we can change this, we can help them, we can change them, we can change, we always want to change other things, other people, other situations. The only thing we can change is us. The only thing we can change is us. We have to stop trying to change other people's thought processes, changing their situation. They have to participate in that. That's not our job. Our job, our only job, is to focus on ourselves and changing what we need to change in ourselves. So I think it's easy to try and focus on someone else, because then you don't have to think about yourself, right? I've definitely been guilty of that. In my past, when I didn't want to deal with my own relationship issues, well, I'm going to go tell my girlfriend how she should do her relationship, because I know how she can fix her relationship, but I don't want to figure out how to fix mine, and that, it just feels so much easier to do, but again, we're just kind of pushing away the inevitable of the fact that we need to be focusing on our own relationships and our own with ourselves and with others. I think it's important to recognize that to live as you are thriving versus surviving is really about your relationship with yourself. Because the more you understand yourself, the more you understand your mind. I've spent a lot of time studying about my mind in the last 6 years. I do have ADHD. I don't let it define me though. I don't like to you say it, but then I don't want you to think that I'm this is my problem I have. No. I think of it as a superpower actually, because I'm able to think about a lot of things at once and I'm very multitasking. But I do see the things that it kind of hinders, and so I'm learning how to work with that parts of me. So I'm reading everything I can get my hands on to learn more and more about behaviors I can change in my life to make my ADHD not be a problem, but actually work for me instead of work against me. But I'm doing that because I know the more I understand my brain, the better I'm going to be able to use my brain, right? Same thing with my body. The more I understand my body, like I told you guys last time, I've changed my relationship with my body now. I tell my body how much I love it all the time. I tell it thank you all the time. I tell it I'm grateful for it. Thank you for getting up this morning. Thank you for walking across the room. Thank you for, I'm so glad you're breathing good today. It seems silly, but I'm really trying to give my body a lot more love and attention, because that's another part of me working on myself, is developing a really good relationship with my brain and my body, understanding how they work, understanding my part in there, and how I am able to affect them. They are not running the show. My body's not running the show. My brain's not running the show. They are tools I'm given that I can use if I learn how to use them. So I got to learn more about myself. So I take that time. I'm not spending all day every day. Obviously, I got a busy life, as you guys know. But anytime I get to myself, I'm trying to learn more about myself. Because the more you know. And so that's kind of another part of thriving, is really connecting with yourself, really understanding how your mind works and what you can do to use your mind at its fullest and its most potential. That is part of thriving. Because when we're in survivor mode, we're not really thinking about those things. We're not really focused on how can I improve this, or how, oh, look at what my body's doing. We're just focused on, do I have everything I need? Am I going to make it through the next day? We're not in that same mindset. So to thrive is you're coming out of that and you're focusing on, oh, what can I learn about myself? So learning is thriving, right? Letting go of the concept of being able to change others or helping others outside of the realm of, just being there for them. It's thriving. We got to let go of that need to change everything. I think it's good to recognize that we are not victims of our reality. We are creators of our reality. And it's easy to be a victim of your reality. It's easy to get sucked into everything that's going on and feeling helpless and hopeless and just feeling like we have no control. But we do. We have control. We have the ability to pull ourselves out of that survival mode. We don't have to remain there. We may have went through it when we were young, and that's always going to be part of you, right? You can go back and look and reflect on the survival that you've been through, but you don't have to continue to live there. It doesn't have to be how you move forward. Because at the end of the day, we're spiritual beings. We are powerful, wonderful, loving spiritual beings. And the spiritual being is inside of this human body to evolve it, to grow it, to take it to its next level. So we got to quit letting the human part of us run everything, right? We got to start letting the inner being, the spiritual side of us, start to run the show. Because it's going to push us out of our survival mode and into our thriving mode, which is where we're meant to be. We were not sent down here to have this human experience, to constantly be in fight or flight. That's not what we're here for. We're here to be thriving, growing, evolving this human form to its greatest form. The evolution's happening. There's no stopping it. It's been going on forever. So why not thrive as we're evolving? Instead of being in this fearful mode of, are we going to make it? Absolutely. We've been making it this far. I don't think humans are going anywhere. So let's wrap it up. So in conclusion, your words and your thoughts are life-changing. You were meant to thrive. Don't limit yourself with old narratives. A thriving person is actively growing and finding fulfillment in life, having motivation and a sense of purpose, finding real connection with others and their community. So go out there and be that example of how to thrive in life. Thank you.